Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your co-hosts, TV, aka TV on basketball, alongside my co-host Jay, aka the Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
Chilling, bro. NBA Finals is in full effect. A tale of two different tapes in terms of game one versus game two. But we're tied up at 1-1 in the series going into game three on what's it going to be on Wednesday?
On Wednesday, yeah.
So, hey, man, everything's even keel right now. Nothing too much to take away from the series, but we got a couple of things that we can break down. So, and not to mention,
You
NBA offseason is rocking, bro. It's about to get
NBA
crazy.
offseason's rocking. We're talking some more WNBA stuff today, which is going to be pretty dope. Bringing you another prospect from me and Jay as well. So you know it's going to be an all-around great episode. And there's still a lot to break down because, man, this NBA Finals, yes, it's 1-1. Yes, there was a blowout in game two, but a lot of different adjustments made, especially on the Oklahoma City side. And we're
Yeah.
going to see if the Pacers are able to bounce back. But yeah, going to be a great episode. Make sure you stay locked in. This is like our second, basically episode recorded within the last week, so we're locking in. So we're going to be able to talk more at basketball hoops with y'all. But before we get into the NBA Finals talk, we do have to plug our other socials. Make sure you follow our individual socials at TV on Basketball, at the Knockdown Jade. Those links can be found in the description down below. In terms of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, make sure you follow us on TikTok and Instagram for the best daily NBA content. That's where you get the game recaps. That's where you get the news, all the different series that we have there. So make sure you check that out. If you're on YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. Also, check out the YouTube Shorts. You can find some of the videos or short form content over there as well. And in terms of the podcast network, Spotify and Apple, just remember to show your support there. Subscribe, leave a review, all that good stuff. We appreciate all of y'all's support. Jay, you ready to get into this?
Yes, sir.
And we're going to obviously start with the NBA Finals, Jay. Let's go there because, as we mentioned off the top, the Indiana Pacers, and we predicted this too, Jay. If you remember last episode, we did predict this, that the Pacers were going to take one game on the road. They're too good on the road not to take a game on the road.
Mm-hmm.
And they did it in the most Pacer way fashion, going down by 15 points in the fourth quarter, absolutely turning it on. It felt like everyone had a big moment in that fourth quarter, capped off with Tyrese Halliburton hitting another game winner in the playoffs. What, Jay? This is like one per series at this point?
Yeah, I believe he's 4 for 4. He's handing them out, bro.
13 for 15, by the way, 13 for 15 on the season, including the regular season, where if it's less than 2 minutes and there's a shot to either tie the game or go ahead, he is 13 for 15. So
Yeah.
this man just does not miss when you need the ball in his hands. He was able to do that in game one. There's a lot to talk about there. But again, the Thunder did bounce back. They made their adjustments. They did not, and I'm going to talk about this later, but they finally let the bigs loose, and they were able to dominate game two in convincing fashion, being able to tie the series up at one apiece, going to Indiana. A lot to break down in the series, Jay. I'm going to throw it over to you. Where do you want to start with this?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that I noticed outside of the big man discrepancy, which you mentioned in game two, and I'm going to let you speak on that one because I think the rebounding numbers are really stark.
Yes.
The other thing that I think was really important, it showed its head more in game one than it did in game two, but it's the turnover aspect, right? The Indiana Pacers are one of the best teams in terms of taking care of the basketball, even dating back to the regular season. I believe they were somewhere between top 3 and top 5 in terms of taking care of the rock. The number I found earlier was that during the regular season, they averaged just about 13 turnovers a game, which was around the top 3. Just in game one alone, they had 24 turnovers, which was a big catalyst to that big 15-point deficit that put them in trouble in the first place before they eventually rallied back. TV, through 2 games, the turnover battle has not only been won by the Thunder, but specifically when you look at what Indiana has done, Indiana's turned the ball over 37 times in 2 games and given up almost as equal points off of those turnovers. Them not taking care of the ball through 2 games has dug them a deep hole. And though they were able to get away with it in game one, game two was not as nice to them.
Oh, no, 100%. Jay, I mean, we said going into the series that, man, if the Pacers want to win this series, they're going to have to play chaotic. They're going to have to throw these different looks at the Thunder. Bro, the Thunder saw these different looks and forced 18 turnovers in the first half of game one. And here's my problem with this. I mean, their defense was on lockdown. Their defense was absolutely on lockdown, especially in that first half. But Jay, they didn't convert. When you mentioned there, they committed 24 turnovers to Indiana Pacers, which only led to 9 or 11 points off turnovers. That is weird for the Thunder in general because they are really good at capitalizing off those turnovers. But again, it's a testament to the Pacers being able to get back on defense and I think I mean it does help that like the Thunder kind of adjusted to them. They didn't really play their bigs as much as they did in Game 2, but it really just took Miles Turner in there if they want to get the offensive rebound. Besides that, everyone else is running back. So like there's no one looking for the rebound. Everyone's like, oh, if a turnover's happening, everyone stop what you're doing, get back on defense. And they actually did a good job in transition defense. That's one of the biggest things as to why the Pacers, even though they committed 18 turnovers in the first half, what was it? It was like a 12-point lead going into the half.
It
Like,
definitely could have been worse than what it was, and that's why I say,
yeah, it
like,
should have been a 25-point game knowing the Thunder in that sense.
yeah, I mean, going back to what you said, even as casually as I said, oh, they converted. I mean, they had 37 turnovers over the course of 2 games. For them to essentially break even over the course of that many lost possessions goes to be a testament to their transition defense, but also goes to show you how many missed opportunities they had on a possession to possession basis in these games. So it's a double edged sword. They were able to cover their tails in a certain aspect, but it was also the fact that when you talk about a Thunder team that's super athletic and able to lock down the way they were, forcing that many turnovers is taking away from a high octane offense like the Pacers. So
Yeah,
it was one of those things where like them not taking care of the ball almost forced them to be better defenders than they've already been throughout this postseason.
yeah,
And it takes away from the things that's made them such a strong suit throughout this postseason run, which is how offensively chaotic they've been and how offensively efficient they've been at the same time.
yeah. And just to go on that, to go in terms of that like chaoticness. I mean, like yes, we talked about the turnovers and everything. The biggest talking point in after these two games, Jay, obviously is Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah.
He, for lack of a better word, has been kind of quiet. I mean, obviously he got the game one. He got the game one game winner over there over Casey Wallace, I believe, there to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
But it's felt like in these last two games that although Tyrese Halliburton has had the biggest moment of the playoffs, the Thunder have just gone completely under his skin. They cannot Jay. There's a stat I want to give you going into this. It's one of the craziest stats I've ever heard.
Okay.
Out of the 208, so Tyrese Halliburton has touched the ball, had the ball 208 times during these two games in the finals so far.
Okay.
He has only been able to touch the paint 16 times. Only 16 times. And I mentioned this in the last episode. They had Lou Dort on him in the regular season, like primarily in these two games, and it led to his lowest offensive rating. It got him to I think his stats were like 11 points per game and 5 assists. Jay, having Lou Dort on him for the majority of the game has completely taken out a big part of the Pacers offense, which is we've seen in the first 3 rounds. Tyrese Halliburton putting pressure on the paint and then kicking it out, spraying out the threes, making sure the ball moves. And here in this series, he hasn't been able to touch the paint at all. 16 for 208, that is ridiculous amount of times that he's been able to just to not get into his element.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the biggest thing when you look about Indiana as well is not just the paint touches create those floater opportunities for them, but they have guys that can shoot at a high clip, right? Aaron Nesmith has gotten much better over the course of these series as a three-point shooter. Andrew Nembhard has been able to contribute from beyond the arc. Miles Turner spraying from stepping back beyond. So, the fact that he's not being able to create that spacing for them has been so detrimental as well, because that's one of the things that was going to help against a Thunder team that already is athletic enough to shut down the paint, operate at a high level. Remember, if you go through the regular season, Alex Caruso, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, those guys, Casey Wallace as well, if I'm not mistaken, those guys are amongst the top 10 amongst guards in rim defense in terms of shot creation and pushing themselves in position to contest. So
yeah, honestly, I mean, every time they attack the paint, there's 3 Thunder in there, and it feels like they're just absolutely suffocating at times. It always amazes me whenever I watch this Thunder team that no matter whoever takes steps in the paint, I think I've been seeing this with Siakam as well. There's always an automatic help. It doesn't matter what happens. There's always automatic help, and this is what we talked about in terms of how great their defense is. They have the players to be able to react because there's a lot of quick guards. There's a lot of guys who are able to, even if they go to the help, they're able to recover and get back to the ball. This is I mean, the Thunder is already we already know how historically great it is, but seeing it unfold against a high powered Pacer team is incredible to watch. To be completely honest, I've been completely in awe with how good their defense is, and I don't even think it's been the best that it has been throughout the playoffs so far. I feel like it's been a lot better, but they're still having a big impact.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other part about it is not just controlling the paint in terms of defending Tyrese Halliburton, but something you had mentioned earlier was just winning the rebounding battle in terms of being able to dominate the defensive and offensive glass. Like, game two was a pretty strong representation of just them having a better understanding of taking advantage of offensive rebounding opportunities, given the fact that the Pacers seemed so worried about trying to hold off OKC's ability to operate in transition.
Yeah.
And they paid. I believe OKC got to double digit offensive rebounds by the end of the game. Yeah, 11.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
they were able to create real opportunities out of that. Those are the type of things that, like, again, go back to something that we've been saying about the Oklahoma City Thunder since the beginning of the year, with Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein being acquired, throwing in Lou Dort, Cason Wallace, having Alex Caruso as part of that, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as a dude who can contest at the rim, having Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as somebody who can help push the ball, Jalen Williams. This collective of guys, paired with the fact that they're able to crash the glass at a high clip with guys like Isaiah Hartenstein, Chet Holmgren, Jay Will, right? Is we can play this game however you want to. If you want to play
Yeah.
up and down, we can play in a fast-paced offense, and we can play in a sense that we're going to combat you with transition offense as well. The other side of it is like, hey, if you want to play physical and wall up and put us in a position where we're going to be able to get rebounds at a high clip and you're not going to contest, we will send our guys to stay home and put ourselves in position to be able to get high rebounds, because outside of Miles Turner, we're not worried about your front court right now, because nobody has really shown that we need to be worried about the physicality on your side.
Yeah, and like we did mention that before, that where it's like the Pacers aren't the most like physical team, but they will
Yeah.
like run circles around you, like make sure you have your eyes, like you have to keep your eyes peeled at all times. But I mean, like, yeah, like this Thunder team, like especially in game two, you got like they showed that like this team, like, as much as we talk about the Pacers depth throughout this entire playoffs, the Thunder depth has been like quietly, like, it hasn't been talked about as much in the playoffs, mostly because I don't think they had to go to it as much. I think we did, which is another episode. But in the last game, absolutely huge. Caruso, 20 points. Aaron Wiggins was freaking dusted off and had an 18-point outing, man. Shout out to the boy Aaron Wiggins. But like, it just goes to show that like they have just so many guys you could trust there. And then like, not only are these guys like being able to be beneficiaries of, Shai being a bit more of a playmaker in game two, but also like, Jay, if you see a couple of those like Aaron Wiggins threes, like it was just literally like tween step back and just like getting into his bag. Like I felt like, especially I think this is like a big difference between like what the Thunder did in game one and game two, was that game one was more of the Shai show. He was being able to be kind of the puppet master for everyone. He wanted to know where everyone to go. He made it abundantly clear in game two, we are going to get these guys going. We're going to get these guys into their spots, feel where they're comfortable with. And then that's going to like spread to the rest of the guys, make sure that they're comfortable in this game. And it doesn't matter because Shai's going to get his 34 points or whatever, where Carlisle said after the game. Like at this point, we just kind of have to pencil in 34 points for Shai, because that's how good he's been like all playoffs long. So I just want to say, I mean, man, when this Thunder team is clicking, like the fact that you can get 38 combined points from like Wiggins and Caruso off the bench kind of just shows you like, man, this is the Thunder where we're like, okay, maybe this could be a 5-game series, and they kind of did show that in game two.
Yeah, and that's a great point by itself. The mere fact that their bench has been able to combat Indiana's bench so well, that's been the biggest thing when you look back at the Cleveland Cavaliers series, or you look back at the series against the New York Knicks. Like, that's the thing we kept highlighting, was that those two teams in those bench minutes could not seem to kind of contain and continue in a proper way to be able to hold down the floor while Donovan Mitchell steps out, while Darius Garland steps off the floor, right?
Yeah.
And it put them in real detrimental situations with Obi Toppin and Ben Mathurin and Ben Shepherd are going off, knocking down threes, getting crazy in transition. TJ McConnell's creating defensive opportunities by stealing the ball in transition. Stealing the ball in passing lanes and creating transition opportunities, right? Those teams weren't able to kind of fill those minutes with positive play. The Thunder don't spend a second without having a positive lineup on the floor in terms of having guys who can shot create, shot distribute, rebound at a high level, crash the glass, gain contest around the rim, right? They always have a solid group where they all play with this same mentality. And so you put yourself in a real position now. You look at, like you said, dusting off Aaron Wiggins. let's also look at the way it's distributed. Aaron Wiggins, 20 minutes, 18 points,
Yeah.
right? So it's the efficiency to come in and say, hey, bro, we need you to come be a big wing guard for us. Come in, give us some baskets, create opportunities for yourself off the bounce. And he gets 5 knockdown threes. I think 2 or 3 of them were catch and shoot opportunities. 1 or 2 of them was off the dribble. Really good situation for himself to just really heat up for them, give them some breathing room, and then you pair that with a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander who has 34 points, right, and gets to the line double-digit amount of times in this game. You get a Jalen Williams who gets to the line 9 times, right? And now you look at an offensive juggernaut, because if everybody is hitting shots, like you're just not messing with this team in that sense, because if they're firing on all cylinders offensively, we already know they're one of the best defenses rated in the entire NBA, dating back to like some of the better NBA Finals teams we've seen. So we know what their defense is capable of. If they're firing on all cylinders like this, I mean, there's not too many teams that are good enough to get a game off of a team like this, let alone win a series.
Yeah, no, this game too really showed, especially like this Thunder team being as dominant as they can be. Like people were waiting for the Pacers to make their little run. I know, like I think at some point it was a 23-point game, and the Pacers went on a 10-0 run, and then people were like, "Oh, here are the Pacers again. They're starting to come back." But this is like a big part of this, like what we talked about. It's like after they go into 10-0 run, Mike Daniel makes the timeout, and they go back on like a 7-0 run. Like everyone is getting like more involved. I know Alex Caruso hit a 3 on that in that span as well. Like it was such a huge part. The other thing I wanted to bring up in this game, and I want to hear your thoughts on this because this has been a very like big talking point.
Okay.
The lineup switch immediately for the Oklahoma City Thunder, where obviously we knew what the starting 5 was going in, like for the majority of the playoffs, for the majority of the season. It was Shai, it was Lu Dort, J Dub, Chet, Hartenstein. They've played this this double big lineup for basically the entire season. But when game 1 came of the NBA Finals, instead of trying to rock with that and kind of seeing where the two big lineup kind of fares in the series, immediately removing Isaiah Hartenstein from the starting lineup, adding Cason Wallace.
Yeah.
Obviously, like some people like may point that as to be like one of the kind of reasons why they ended up losing game 1, of like the non-trust in their bigs there to kind of deal with the speed and the athleticism of the Indiana Pacers. They didn't play a single minute together, which is really strange to see that there was no like Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren minutes together in game 1. I think they only had like less than 5 in game 2, but they at least went back to it. Do you agree with the change? Were you surprised with the change? Do you think maybe Mark Daniel like kind of pulled that card too early? I want to just hear your thoughts on that.
So surprised from the change from the perspective that they have a rebounding advantage, having a guy like Chet Holmgren and Isaiah Hartenstein significantly. Sure. Being able to stagger those guys does help them in a real way, but being able to play them together creates a real opportunity for them, understanding that the Indiana Pacers aren't the kind of team that crashes the glass often, right? Their whole goal is to pick the ball off the basket, pick the ball off the rim, and start to sprint in transition, right? The idea is to get the ball off the backboard as quickly as possible, get it to Tyrese Haliburton, and make a quick decision, right? That's typically the way that the Indiana Pacers operate. So to combat that, if you're putting 2 on the rim now with Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren having the other 3 go back, you put Miles Turner, or you put Tony Bradley, you put those guys in a pinch, because now it's 2 versus 1 rebounding, which usually is going to go in favor of the team that has the 2 guys that stay down, right? So because they're staying home, that's a real opportunity for them. The part where I think it makes sense goes to something that you kind of mentioned in passing, which is combating with the speed element of the Indiana Pacers. At the end of the day, the whole goal for slowing down the Indiana Pacers is to create an offense for them that is heavily reliant on half-court efficiency as much as humanly possible. Because when the game slows down in a half-court efficiency setting, the ball flows through Pascal Siakam, not through Tyrese Haliburton.
Yeah.
And that's the change that we saw a lot of, dating back to even what you mentioned earlier in the podcast about his ability to get paint touches, right? A lot of the paint touches that Tyrese Haliburton gets over the course of a season, when you see, starts with his ability to create instant transition, really once he touches the ball right before midcourt. And then creating almost a pseudo transition opportunity by being able to get downhill, press the line, get a paint touch, get within 15 feet, and then create from there. when you slow them down and put them in a position where you're able to put them in a space where they have to operate out of the half court, now you start to see these elbow pass downs to Pascal Siakam. You're seeing the giving him an opportunity to 1v1, take somebody down to the post and operate, right? And if you're doing that, you're slowing them down and you're also taking other guys out of the mix at the same time. And you're almost playing Pascal Siakam hero ball in a sense. So I think that also we have to give Casey Wallace some credit as a defender as well. I think
Yeah.
also is something that should be considered as well because he can guard kind of up for his size.
Mm-hmm.
So with all of those things encompassed together, it's not that Isaiah Hartenstein isn't useful in a series like this one. It's just that one where if you're able to slow down Indiana's transition offense, create more half court opportunities, guard well in the half court opportunities, and space the floor more by having a guy that can step out and shoot the three like a Casey Wallace, you basically match up bar for bar with Indiana in the best way possible. So, although it might seem like a short leash for Isaiah, I think it's also understanding and recognizing early that if you shut down the transition aspect of Indiana, they're not that fast, chaotic team that we saw, take out two of the better teams in the Eastern Conference just, through the last two rounds.
No, I definitely 100%. I definitely see I had a feeling that was where the series was going to go anyway, where it was going to be like, okay, maybe the one big lineup was going to be the main the main change that the Thunder were going to have to make the biggest adjustment. It was more of the fact man, they're doing this from minute one. That they're going to do this without even having to see that. I mean, they had to play the price in game one. I mean, they made a bad decision overall in the final 3 minutes, not to play a single big at all. So forget just having one big on the floor. They didn't play a single big in the final 3 minutes of the game, which helped propel the Pacers comeback if you want to think about it that way.
Right.
But at the same time, it's just weird to see from a team that's been so dominant, who's had 80 overall wins so far in this playoffs, in this playoffs and regular season, that you had something that kind of got you to the ball, that got you to the finals, that has been dominating every single team, and you just I mean the switch was going to happen, but the fact that it was going to happen minute one, was definitely a surprise to me. I will say, it was definitely a surprise to me that it happened at minute one. I mean, it didn't matter much in game two. Obviously, they absolutely destroyed the Pacers, and they at least got a little bit of those minutes of Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren. But at the same time, it's just weird to see, especially someone as important as Isaiah Hartenstein, not just on the rebounding front. He helps them pass the ball more, and I think a reason why what took the Thunder out of the element and why they weren't used to the starting lineup in the first game was that you could see in the in assist numbers. They only had 13 total assists in game one. They had 14 first half assists in game two, which kind of showed that they had a bit more of intent in terms of passing the ball. But Isaiah Hartenstein is such a big proponent of that because he's such a good passing big overall. So I don't know, yes, it's maybe it'll work for them long term. It's just weird to me to see that someone who is so important on different fronts for this the Thunder team, who has been there throughout the season, has been a big part to that two big lineup being able to take him to the finals, just be switched off immediately. But it's also maybe a case where it's man, this is we want to send a message right away that we're not going to take this we know what we're getting into with the Pacers, and we want to be able to counteract that right away. So maybe it's more of Mark Daniel just trying to go for the kill as well. So you can even think there's different ways you can definitely view it.
I agree with that. Game 3 will be really telling. That's one of the hardest things about being able to differentiate a game 1 to game 2 that's so starkly different, right? I think that's going to be the biggest thing, is seeing how Mark decides to approach game 3 with that same lineup change. Does he come out the gate and doesn't even let the minute pass before he decides to pull the trigger from a lineup construction standpoint? That's going to be the interesting thing. Game 3 is going to be a real tone setter for me when I look at the way the series is going to go, because I feel like if game 3 is a good reflection of some of the things OKC learned from game 2, this series is going to end in 5 the way that we kind of predicted. If things lean more towards game 1, it's going to tell me that there's not really a true formula for the Oklahoma City Thunder to necessarily win. It's just kind of them out-talenting Indiana in game 2, and that's showing its head in the form of an Aaron Wiggins coming off the bench, Alex Caruso having his own good game as well, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander having almost 35 points in the game, right? So that'll be the biggest storyline to me, is how do the Thunder, if they do win in game 3, how do they win? Because it'll show either a certain level of versatility in their ability to win, or it's a eureka, we figured out the formula to shut down the Indiana Pacers, and now it's going to be a short series because this thing's going to get ugly.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's something that could definitely happen. Last talk for the NBA Finals. Going into Game 3, we talk about Game 3, how it's like very big, especially if the Thunder can like win in such a dominant fashion as they did in Game 2. Like it could be a sign, and especially I could definitely see the narrative going this way, is that the Thunder, they just needed to kind of get Game 1 out their system. Now they finally figured out a way to completely like dominate the Pacers. Let's start with the Thunder first. Like, what do they have to continue to do going into Game 3 in order to continue on with the series, continue on with the dominance, and like any adjustments that you could think that they can make?
I think the biggest thing starts with the turnover battle, just like I mentioned at the top. Being able to force the Indiana Pacers into turning the ball over at a high clip takes them out of their element. This is a team that takes care of the ball at a really high level. Between Tyrese, between TJ McConnell, between Pascal Siakam, like some of their most significant ball handlers on a consistent basis, they make good decisions with the ball in their hands. And this is a team that operates so efficiently, not just because they play fast, but because they make quick decisions, not just good decisions. So the ability to turn the ball over for Indiana on a consistent basis, that's going to be super important in OKC's favor. We saw that in game 1, like you mentioned. I think they averaged, not average. They had OKC scored 18, 19 points off of turnovers just in the first half of game 1, as you mentioned before. That's the type of stuff where when that game gets ugly, right, things go a little bit differently in game 1, and this is a series where the Pacers are down 0-2. That goes to tell you that the Thunder, in terms of playing significant on-ball pressure and forcing turnovers and creating in transition, those things, like, they're thriving in all the ways that they're supposed to if you want to be the Indiana Pacers team. It's like this one. So they're doing exactly what they need to do in terms of creating those opportunities. It's just the keep your foot on the neck type of aspect. I believe Shai Gilgeous-Alexander said at the end of game 1, it was like, we have to remember that this is a 48-minute team, right?
Yeah.
And that was proven in game 1. And I think game 2, they responded with the positive kind of energy. You even mentioned how it seemed like there was a point where they were down, Indiana was down 23, and they started to kind of just start making shots. And you're like, wait a minute, the rumbling's coming. We saw this with the New York Knicks back in the series of the first 2 games against Boston Celtics, right? Of this, they're down 20 and it almost feels like the sweet spot for something crazy to happen, right?
Yeah.
And Oklahoma City just was not having that in game 2. You have to kind of approach the same process. You have to approach it with the same thought process in game 3 to send that message that, like, all that cute comeback stuff that made you guys the underdog to get here is not going to fly against a team like this that's built to be championship ready. So I think that's the most important thing. I think they need to stick to a lot of the things that they have been doing through the first 2 games. But the main thing from game 2, more importantly than game 1, is to build off that aspect of, like, you remember, this team knows how to get busy in the fourth quarter with 5 minutes left. You do not want to let them start feeling themselves, because things like game 1 happen, and you look at a series that's tied when it probably should be down. It should be down. Like I said, the Pacers should be down 0-2, and we should be looking at 2 blowout victories for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and instead we're trying to see who's going to take the edge going into game 3.
Yeah, no, for sure. They gotta stay focused for that 48 minutes, 100%. Some of the things I have down here, whenever Siakam's not on the floor, just play the 2 bigs. I honestly, like, I know they only played 5 minutes there, but when I'm looking at the matchups with like Chet Hen, like Isaiah Hartenstein on the court, they're really doing that because Pascal Siakam could like be a problem for Chet Holmgren in terms of especially like the speed and athleticism and being able to get by him. But whenever he's on the floor, that's when you play the 2 bigs, especially like in order to like help deal with the rebounding problem which you experienced in game 1. So just because I also think, again, it just helps move the ball around, and I think that's what was missing a lot in game 1, which is the flow of movement for the Oklahoma City Thunder. So having those 2 guys on the court, even at like small periods of time in the game, is absolutely huge, just to kind of get the ball movement. Another thing to deal with ball movement involved Jet and J-Dub early. I think Shai Gilgeous-Alexander made that a point in game 2 as well. I mean, 2 34-plus point performances, by the way, from Shai. He has been absolutely phenomenal. I think the most points in the first 2 games of an NBA Finals debut, which is incredible. I think that puts him like right up there with like I forgot who it was. I think it was like Will Chamberlain or something, which is like the most like point like most points out of the first 2 games of an NBA Finals debut, which is crazy. But Shea only had 3 assists in the first game. He had 3 assists in the first quarter in game 2. Like he I think he like made it like an actual like goal for himself, where it's like, you know what, eventually I'm going to get mine. I know I'm going to be able to get my shots off. This Pacer team has not been able to defend me one-on-one. Get these guys involved early, get them involved in the offense, and that's when you have the off-ball movement going on. That's when you have people who are not deliberately just trying to pass the ball, trying to find Shea again, but looking for their own shot and making sure that, you know, other guys are get open as well and helping the defense to react. So that's the 2 things I would look for if I'm the Thunder. Just going to throw it over to you real quick. For the Pacers, anything they have to change going into the next 2 games?
You mentioned it earlier, Tyrese Halliburton's ability to get paint touches. It opens up everything else on the floor for them. Taking care of the ball, obviously, is the combatant to what I said Oklahoma City should continue to do in terms of forcing turnovers. Taking care of the ball and Tyrese Halliburton's ability to get paint touches is huge because it just creates a spacing for this team, and it creates 3-point opportunities. It creates driving lanes. It creates foul drawing opportunities, right? Like Tyrese Halliburton is the engine at the end of the day. Pascal Siakam has probably been the most consistent of their finals run, but Tyrese Halliburton is the guy that makes the engine go, and his ability to get to the rack, whether it's creating contact, creating shot opportunities for others, or just getting to the basket and finishing himself, is a big part of being able to get this team going. And his inability to do so far is why it's felt like outside of one big shot, Tyrese has been relatively quiet through 2 games.
Yeah, no, he 100% needs to get more like involved, and I would like to see the Pacers like be a bit more creative with him trying to like get into the paint in terms of like maybe not have him start with the ball, maybe not just like a simple like down screen to kind of get him to the ball. Be a bit more creative, get him cutting to the rim, get him like multiple screening actions, just again the chaoticness of trying to like get to the Pacers eventually, like get to the like kind of confuse the Thunder off. Like they're doing a lot better in terms of like maybe like instead of, you know, starting with Andrew Nembhard and just trying to, you know, feed the ball to Halliburton while he's getting face guarded by Lou Dort, they're starting to get Miles Turner at the elbow and maybe start to do like a dribble handoff just so you can get a little bit of space to try and operate. So just different ways, being a bit more creative in terms of like trying to get Tyrese Halliburton on the ball and being able to create in different ways. The other thing, man, you talk about how they just can't score in the paint. The Thunder are just too suffocating down there. This is why the 3-point battle needs to be won, because like they've been the best 3-point shooting team throughout this entire playoffs, in terms of percentage wise, and of course with made threes. A big part of the game 1 win was that they were able to hit 6 threes in the fourth quarter, while the Thunder were able to hit 0.
Yeah.
Like and that was multiple guys throughout that quarter, whether it was Miles Turner, Andrew Nembhard, Aaron Nesmith, Tyrese Halliburton, all 4 of those guys were able to hit threes in the fourth quarter, and to really kind of put this game out of reach, to really like, you know, expand the 3-point differential. They need to win the 3-point battle, and they're going to be able to hit their shots because the paint is going to be super hard to get into, especially when you're going to have one of Chet Holmgren or Isaiah Hartenstein in the paint the entire time. So the Pacers are going to have to make those adjustments, and obviously you want them to be up 3-1 if you really want to have a chance at this NBA Finals. But if they can get another one here, tie series up, you know you can win in Oklahoma, which is good to know. It's going to at least try and get this into a 2-2 series going into Oklahoma.
Yeah, definitely agree. This is one of those things where Indiana does not want to go down 2-1. I honestly believe this is one of those situations where Indiana does not want to go down 2-1 for obvious reasons, but I also think the way that game 2 went for them, if the Oklahoma City Thunder can rattle off another win of that caliber, that's going to be a very demoralizing situation in that space where you're like, whoa, like we might have finally got figured out after kind of, you know, again, catching 2 really good teams, by the way, because I don't want to discredit, you know, teams like Cleveland and teams like New York, but you caught 2 really good teams lacking with your play style, your ability to be resilient, those things. OKC's ability to shut the water off and then do it 2 games back to back where they win by 15, 16 points going into game 4 up 2-1. That's not the best storyline scenario for the Pacers if they really want to win this series, which obviously they do.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to the point where the Thunder just have more room for error. I mean, like they lost game 1. Jay, they're 5-0 after a loss in the playoffs. They're 18-2 after a loss throughout this entire regular season. They just know how to respond. The Pacers, I'm not going to say that they're going to kind of like falter after having like 2 straight losses, but you want to be in an advantage where you have kind of the edge on the Thunder at all times. You need to have that extra edge. So hopefully they're able to get this next one at home and be able to at least have some sort of momentum going into game 5, which is going to be the huge turning point in the series. You don't want to be down 3-1. Obviously you'd want to be up 3-1, but this Thunder team has been really good, so you got to take the wins when you can, and I think game 3, like you mentioned, is going to be absolutely massive. So let us know what you guys think down below. Who you got in these next 2 games? Who do you think that the Thunder are going to finally take control of the series? Do you think the Pacers are going to take one? We want to hear your thoughts down below. Any final thoughts?
Hey man, I got OKC winning game 3, so we'll see what happens.
I hope the Pacers come out with some verified and hopefully a more aggressive Tyrese Halliburton for sure. Jay, moving on to the next topic, it's time to talk about the WNBA. And Jay, I've been thinking about talking about this team for a couple weeks now. I want to let it simmer to see how bad it's gonna get, but I feel like it's time to kind of talk about this team.
Yeah.
We've been talking about some bad teams like having a slow start to the season. We talked about the Chicago Sky a couple weeks ago, the Las Vegas Aces, who starting to look a bit more more and more iffy as the season goes on. But Jade, they're not even those who are not even the worst teams in the league. Currently, the worst team in the league is the Dallas Wings, the owner of the number 1 overall pick and home of the team of Paige Beckers. Not quite the Caitlin Clark sort of start that you guys that they're definitely hoping for. Obviously, Caitlin Clark did lose a couple of games in her first few games, but Dallas Wings, 1-9 start. Haven't looked great. Their offense has been pretty good, but their defense has not been it. There's obviously been injuries to Paige Beckers as well. It's been kind of a mess of a season. From what I'm seeing, a lot of people are not a fan of the coaching right now of the Dallas Wings as well. But I want to throw it over to you, Jay. Your thoughts on this really bad start from the Dallas Wings, especially after getting Paige Beckers?
So I think the biggest thing is that obviously you have to understand that not every rookie can just be an impact player off the gate. And even though Paige Beckers is an elite level guard at her position, not just coming out of college and her pedigree, but as an overall shot distributor, a person who can get other players involved and different things like that, she's a very good player. But I think the biggest difference between this team and, let's say, Caitlin Clark with Indiana last year, right, is from the guard position, the keys were handed directly to Caitlin to come in and be an orchestrator both for herself and to create opportunities for others around her, right? And I would say that Erica Wheeler was probably one of the other significant players that helped with that, or just being in real position where they had real stuff that they could do, right? Versus with this Dallas team, you have Enrique, who's coming off of a huge year offensively, right? Despite the bad year for the team's success, you're looking at a player who just had essentially a career year, now steps into a backcourt that is also going to have the number 1 overall pick and the most improved player in the league in Dejanay Carrington, right? Who wants to continue to ascend after having an elite level year as a player that also was an all defensive candidate, if I'm not mistaken, as well, for the WNBA last year. So you have a trio of guards all in 3 totally different stages of their career in terms of where their trajectory is. One that's an ascending superstar, one that's an established superstar, and one that just got to stardom and is trying to maintain the spotlight. You pair that with their weakness within the front court, and TV, you mentioned this off camera, it's only going to get weaker once Eurobasket play starts.
Yes.
You put yourself in a position where, look at some of the best teams in the league, bro. They all have elite bigs that not only can create for themselves, but are just really great rebounders. Small ball against great rebounding teams usually does not go well. And that's creating real tough opportunities for them.
All the top W teams are they have some all-star level elite if you want to be competing with them.
And one of the biggest teams that doesn't is the Wings. And that's killing them. That is killing them.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's a 1-9 start again. The offense hasn't looked bad. When you have Paige Beckers, Dejanay, and also Enrique, it's going to be hard to not be able to put points on the board. But it's the way that's this team's kind of being run. I feel like as this guy who's a first time head coach has just not got a good grip on this team whatsoever.
Yeah,
I mean the defense hasn't been working. It feels like is even though they got Paige Beckers on the court, I mean, like Enrique's like usage is still like within the top 20 in the W. Like it's like they're still trying to play like like the style of ball that they were playing last year, but
Yeah.
now you're trying to add more talent. And at the end of the day, like the Dallas Wings were one of the worst teams like last year. They lost Satu unfortunately into free agency,
Mm.
but and we talked about this off pod. Like when you know that you're getting like a generational talent in Paige Beckers, when you know that you want to make some like wholesale changes in your roster,
Mm.
commit to a rebuild, commit to making building around a certain player the goal.
Yeah.
You lost on Satu, who would have been by the way, he would have been awesome on this team, but you decided to keep Enrique. 1 year left on her deal. Obviously, she's been with the team for a while now.
Mm.
But you got to understand when you bring in Dijonay, you have Paige in the lineup, and now you have someone who demands volume on her shots in Enrique. There's just so much going on at guard position that you just don't know like who like. There's just so much confusion. I know there's like just certain points throughout the season where I've seen clips on TikTok of Enrique and Dijonay just like kind of like bring each other to the side and just deciding like where they want to be on the court and all that. Like there's just a lot of confusion with this Dallas Wings team.
Mm.
And Enrique, we know she's a great scorer and everything, but like when you're trying to like have like a whole like culture change, a whole new like change in your system, having someone like from like the old guard, yes, like she's like a very talented player. She was a former WNBA All Star, but having her like mixed in with like trying to get someone to be your number one guard like eventually going forward,
Mm.
it's just like has not been like a good mix so far. And you had a chance in the offseason when a lot of teams you feel like they were making trades in order to like go into that next phase of your rebuild, especially now that you looked into getting Paige Beckers.
Mm.
You were able to like kind of move away from the old guard by trading Enrique, and you wanted to kind of make things work. Maybe you saw like you mentioned off the top, like a way where Caitlin Clark can like take like a like last place Indiana Fever team and give them a chance at the playoffs. Clearly, this hasn't worked with this trio so far here in Dallas.
Mm.
If you could find a trade for Enrique, I would say do it. But at the same time, like it feels like it's.
I don't know, man. I think I misspoke earlier and I said Erica Wheeler. You have to remember the back half of last season for Kelsey Mitchell and Caitlin Clark last year had them looking like a top 5 duo in the entire league once they started to click.
Yeah.
This duo in Arika Ogunbowale and Paige Beckers has the chance to be a better version than that. Because I do think that as an offensive engine, Arike is a better shot generator than Kelsey Mitchell, although she is very, very good. I don't mean that in a disrespectful manner. Yeah. I do think that Arike Ogunbowale is a better offensive engine than Kelsey Mitchell is. And I think that Paige is on par, if not maybe a tier below, Caitlin Clark as an offensive player as well. And so I think that they have the ability to make that click in a way where they can be on par with that kind of backcourt. But you have to remember, we didn't see that backcourt really start clicking until after the All-Star break. So I want to give this a little bit more time. I do think the front court is their biggest issue personally, because if you remember,
the defense is bad. Melissa Smith, like who's been with this team for like a bit now, has not been good.
Yeah, we have to remember that one of the biggest things defensively for the Indiana Fever last year was that they had Aaliyah Boston in the middle as a rim defender, as a good defender on the around the basket and things like that to kind of help hold things down. And then we saw this offseason Indiana kind of delved even further into the defensive identity with some of their signings that they made, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that Dallas is kind of in the frame of trying to do that, but it's the early stages. So I see a lot of last season's Indiana Fever team in this Dallas team. Do I think they're going to be nearly as successful? No, because I think that their center position is very, very I think their center position is their biggest Achilles heel. And with the Eurobasket element of it, I think it's going to cost them a lot of games. If as much games as it's already cost them now, but even worse because they're going to kind of be forced into small ball lineups. So I think that's a bigger element to it than the Arika Ogunbowale Paige Beckers duo not necessarily gelling and being as cohesive as we would like. And of course, I think that the DJ Carrington thing is also kind of tough, but I think those three players can coexist in a real way. I just think it's still super early. And like I said, you're talking about 3 different players that are coming from three totally different walks of where their career is in terms of trying to be players that, are well respected within this league that, that really
Yeah.
matters.
No, I definitely see that. I just when I look at like the way Enrique plays, and I think this is where I feel the difference is like with Caitlyn having Kelsey and now Paige having Enrique is that Kelsey is like was like willing to like to be able to move off ball and like really work with Caitlyn in that end. Paige hasn't been on the court like enough to be able to like figure that out. But like Enrique has been such a high usage player since she got into the league
True.
that like making this switch right away to like being able to like hand the keys over to Paige, being able to run the offense is a big adjustment. It is a massive adjustment. This is why like I was saying like man like I think like having an outlet like Satu Sabali who was on the team last year probably would have been like a better fit per se compared to Enrique. And when you have like when you're trying to build around someone like a Paige Beckers, you want to have the girls there who are able to feed off her, not like kind of overlap with her. That's why I think Dejanay like eventually is going to be a great fit next to her, and that's also why I think like she's been getting a lot of love earlier on this year. Maddie Seagrass. Maddie Seagrass has been like fantastic to start the year. I want her to get more minutes. She's finally starting to get into the starting lineup, but I feel like that trio eventually of Paige, Dejanay, Maddie Seagrass when she gets like more opportunities could be something where it's like okay, these girls like is a good way like where Paige can be able to be the number one option, but you have girls there who are able to feed off of her. Where Enrique is more of like the type of like I think we mentioned this like earlier like before the episode started like a LaMelo Ball over there in Charlotte where it was like high volume, having to have the ball in her hands to really be successful. I feel like she's extremely talented, but like when you're trying to like go into like this like era where you have Paige, who is a very willing passer, and like and people have been like, and there's been certain people on the team who have been beneficiaries of that. That having someone like Enrique, who is a high volume type of scorer, maybe give him time to gel, but at the same time, like it might be a bit like too hard of a defender, and I think it's a bit more different than like what the Fever had to like deal with. Where Kelsey was like, you know what, right away she was able to like make that transition and like work as a perfect off ball player with Caitlyn.
It's a work in progress build, man. I think this is one of those things that we understood with Dallas, considering the fact that when they got Paige, it didn't seem like it was going to be one of those things that was an instant puzzle piece fit. I think that you make a really good point that maybe the backcourt of Dejanay next to Paige fits more seamlessly than all three of them because of the fact that Dejanay doesn't require as much on-ball offense, and she's a high-level defender, right? It's kind of the idea of let's talk about a team like the Orlando Magic is a perfect example, right? A lot of people bring up the Orlando Magic in the NBA as a team where let's say you get a Darius Garland or you get a what's another good offensive player? Anthony Simons, right? Are two offensive creators at the point guard position. And you're like, you know what? Those will be perfect guys to trade for if you're able to keep Jalen Suggs. Because if you have Jalen Suggs, now you have a defensive point guard that can slide over to the two, shoot at a high level because he was shooting 37 to 39% from three before his injury last year. And you put him next to a guy who is offensively gifted in a way of creating for themselves and creating off the bounce and creating for others. And now you have this cohesive lineup. Or another good example is like the plug and play of put Drew Holiday next to any offensive point guard, right?
Yeah.
And you say now that offensive point guard is protected by the secondary playmaker and secondary guard in the backcourt being Drew Holiday, but you also have another player who can handle the ball, initiate offense, do those different type of things. So I can see why that works in a way where compared to we're looking at Enrique and Paige as almost the Dame CJ thing in a way. If you want to make an NBA comparison, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you say the little backcourt, lack of defensive upside, two players that need the ball in their hands in order to create at a high level and be actually like super highly effective. It had a shelf life. It could be successful. We saw it dang near get to the Western Conference Finals, but is it a framework that can last long in terms of being a perennial contending team? We saw that it wasn't. And Dallas is in the early stages of something very similar to that.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see something like I can definitely see like those sort of comparisons for sure. I mean, like 1-9 is bad is a bad start, to be fair, they did play the Lakers 3 times in like this in this 10-game span as well. But also losing 2 games to Chicago was kind of a tough end as well.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a lot of stuff to be worried about if you're the Dallas Wings. But again, it's very early on in the season, very early on in the Paige Becker's line in the Paige Becker era there in Dallas. They're gonna start to figure things out. Whether they end up trading Enrique, whether letting her contract expire by the end of the year, there's gonna be a lot of like figuring out what this roster still. It's very early on, and it's gonna be like we're gonna see like how Dallas is gonna be able to respond. A lot of people that I've seen like online have been saying, let's just get rid of the coach already. It's only been 10 games and they're already calling for the coach's head. So we want to hear what you guys think down below. What's happening with the Dallas Wings, and what do you think they should be doing going forward and trying to bounce back from this 1-9 start? Quickly, just like honestly, like before we move on from the WNBA stuff, I want to give your thoughts quickly, Jay, on like the whole Eurobasket thing. I mean, we don't really have this in the NBA where we have in the middle of like a WNBA season where there's like a tournament happening, kind of similar to like the FIBA World Cup, like in the middle of the summer. But this one's in Eurobasket, where middle of the season you have some players leaving. I mean, Niara Sabally is leaving to represent Germany, sitting with Leonie Fiebig. The 2 centers over there in Dallas, that's what we were talking about earlier on. They're going to be leaving for Eurobasket for a couple weeks. How do you feel about WNBA players leaving mid-season for this Eurobasket tournament? I know it's 2 to 3 weeks, but like especially like when teams could start to pull ahead and like you have key members of your rotation being missing for these 2 to 3 weeks is obviously going to be tough for like these W teams. Your thoughts on this idea of them like just leaving mid-season basically and like being able to like go to this tournament?
I can't judge anybody because obviously the ability to play for your country is obviously very important depending on who the player is. I also think that you have to factor in the fiscal aspect of it. From a money perspective, a lot of these players are much more monetarily valued, let's say, overseas playing for their home countries, right? So in any opportunity that they can continue to keep their name in the hat as part of those organizations, as part of playing in their home countries, you're going to do so because, again, if you just look at, and that's what's so important about the upcoming WNBA CBA negotiations, is going to be putting more money in the pot for WNBA players to make it where there's more of an American-bound aspect of playing professional basketball, because for the longest time, the money has always been seen as more valuable playing overseas in the women's game. Right? We just saw very recently with Gabby Williams from Seattle. Honestly, her way back into the league probably stemmed from the Olympics. But I would also say that if you remember, a lot of her comments around why she went back overseas was related to the financial stability created through the fact that they were just more valued playing over there, right? So I think that's just the aspect of it. It sucks that Eurobasket is placed when it's placed, but basketball year-round is just the new age version of how things are when it comes to, honestly, all sports. I think the ability to be year-round is something that a lot of sports are trying their best to work towards, and definitely basketball is one of them, with the fact that it has much more of a worldwide audience. So it's just a part of the impact of the business model being where the Paige Beckers of the world look at a situation where her NIL deal with something like the 3-on-3 tournament is higher than like what her salary for the year is through the Dallas Wings, right? That's one of those things where the ability to find other avenues to make up for the fact that the number of what probably their true value is versus what the WNBA's current CBA has things broken down towards makes it where players, in a sense, are undervalued, especially when you look at the impact of NIL now, making it where players are getting millions for singular seasons, as opposed to once you get to a professional league, you're getting the triple-digit 100,000s for playing a season.
No, for sure. I think, like, honestly, like, I don't blame for people who are wanting to do that. There's some girls who are saying, though, Gabby Williams is going to be staying with the Seattle Storm. I'm not going to be representing Team France. Staying with Satou Sabally is going to be staying with the Mercury. But honestly, if you guys have followed soccer or football in any sort of way, in Europe, you know that this is kind of normal. Like the AFCON Nations tournament happens right in the middle of the Premier League season. Same thing with the Asian tournament that happened. So you see like some of the best players in the world, like Mohamed Salah, like a Young Min Son, just completely like leave their team for a little bit to participate in this tournament. Obviously for national pride and being able to perform at the biggest tournament over there. This is what Eurobasket basically like symbolizes there, where it's like European like tournament for like the biggest tournaments. Even if you like that's why you see some of like the key like role player like key players of like WNBA teams going there. So it's a big time tournament. I completely understand. I feel like once this whole CBA thing is like put in place and like these salaries do end up changing, hope like definitely for the better, that there's going to be like a bit more of a focus of trying to stay in the WNBA. Hopefully, this means that girls are not like putting their bodies through going through an entire year of basketball just so they can get that extra money. I mean, we saw what happened with like Nika Mule being able to go over to Turkey and like injuring her ACL in like, the first like 2 games of the season. We want to like make sure that they, WNBA players get their season, go through a proper offseason and all that. Yes, it's good to go in these type of tournaments. Hopefully the CBA too kind of works that around so they can still participate in the tournaments in the off season, so they don't have to do it in the midst of the regular season. But yeah, at the end of the day, I don't blame them for going, especially again from a financial aspect. But hopefully, like there's going to be some sort of like change, like you mentioned, in terms of like once the new CBA comes in.
Yeah, so that's just the, like I said, it's the monetary aspect of it. You have to keep that in consideration while also factoring in the national pride aspect, like you mentioned, kind of comparing it to like stuff with the soccer season for Premier League. Those are like very comparable. Where like yes, with NBA basketball, it's not the same, but part of the national pride aspect not being an issue outside of the scheduling is also that the money in the NBA is good enough to not necessarily be worried about necessarily trying to recoup in other areas. So
yeah, hopefully that's the case. But yeah, let us know what you guys think down below on that aspect as well of Eurobasket.
Yeah.
Also for the people who are watching that, let us know who you think is going to win as well. Jay, moving on to the final topic of the show, it's time for the NBA Draft Prospect Spotlight, where me and Jay over the last couple of weeks have been giving you guys more of these under the radar type of prospects that you should be looking for. Obviously, we're going to be doing our NBA mock draft later on in the month, probably after the NBA Finals finishes, and we're going to try and like kind of put you guys on basically on some prospects that you wouldn't be really keeping your eyes on. And we got some 2 good ones here today. Jay, I'm going to throw it over to you. Who do you have here to present?
So the player that I want to talk about is Cam Jones out of Marquette. Had a really strong season this last year as a senior. Older player at 23 years old, but has the build of a high-level guard at 6'5", 205 pounds. He gives me a lot of like one of my favorite players in the prospect pool back during that 2019 draft class was Zion Williamson and John Morant and those guys was Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And I see a lot of that similar aspect in Cam Jones in terms of what he can bring to the table as a combo guard that can create offense for himself, play make at a real high level. Not necessarily the most athletic, but a guy who can shoot the ball at a good clip from 3. I think this senior year, he had so much more offensive responsibility that it kind of impacted his shot selection. But if you look at the prior 3 years before his senior season, he was a 36 to 39% three-point shooter, knockdown guy in catch and shoot situations. And I think on a certain team where has the defensive infrastructure around him to also kind of like help open up opportunities on that side of the ball, he's going to be a dude that can thrive as a decision maker in the open court, right? Creating transition opportunities for his teammates and everything like that. So this is a guy who's just very savvy, able to get to the rim, able to get shots off at a high clip in the mid range, and he just makes good decisions. He falls into the good old J school of backup point guards who are steady handed, the Ty Jeromes, the Tyus Joneses. Those kind of guys that I feel like can come off your bench, keep your offense steady, create in a real way, and just make sure that the bar doesn't fall off the hinges. So I like him as a player that can step in and compete right out the gate, especially as an older prospect.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, like this guy. I mean, like when you told me that you're gonna bring this guy up, I knew that this is gonna be your type of guy, especially with your love for the Tyus Joneses of the world. The way that people have been talking about Ty Jerome like all of this year, like this is the guy that kind of fits into that mold. Like again, obviously people are gonna be scared by this guy's gonna be like almost 24 years old when the NBA season does end up starting, but been in the college game for a while. Not only has he been in the college game for a while, but he has just constantly gotten better, Jay. And I think as someone like as a big point guard as well, you're not going to be like you're not going to be afraid of him to deal on the defensive end. He could even be kind of like a combo guard. I mean, he's improved on the playmaking for sure, but you could definitely like play him sometimes at the two. I don't think that's going to be that big of a deal, and he might end up being, like you mentioned, like one of those just like second round picks where you're like, oh, this guy ended up dropping. Like, this is like where this guy ended up dropping. Oh, that's a pretty, like, not gonna lie, someone who's been here for like who's been in the NBA for like 10 plus years, like being able to get someone like that in the second round, like that's a pretty good find. So yeah, no, I like the idea of having Cam Jones on like as like one of these, like especially for like a playoff team who's like needing like a backup point guard, maybe a third point guard to learn underneath like some of their older guys. I think Cam Jones would be a pretty good get for sure.
Yeah, so he's just a solid fit. I think he's going to be a guy that when you look at a team like,
I was gonna say, what teams do you think? What teams do you think you can get?
there's a couple of interesting squads. I think obviously if you're talking about just a ready-made prospect, you look at teams like Brooklyn that just kind of need blue chip guys to be able to come in and compete out the gate. I think Orlando would be a really good team for Cam as a dude that like can come in and knock down shots at a high clip, which is something they desperately need from the point guard position, and they can do it at a budget level, given the fact that you're gonna have to give up stuff for a Trae Young, for a Anthony Simons, those type of
Do you think
players.
Phoenix could maybe, if they did they have a second round pick? Does Phoenix have a second round pick?
I
Maybe.
don't, but I can double check. I'm not entirely sure if Phoenix has a second round. He's definitely not. He's definitely getting drafted. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised if, given the fact that Ty Jerome is someone that, Ty Jerome is somebody that, Cleveland is not going to be able to retain. I wouldn't be surprised if at 29, maybe they try to get something similar.
Yeah.
Actually, wait a minute. That 29th pick, according to Tankathon, is Phoenix's.
Yeah.
So that would actually be a perfect place for Phoenix. Would be at 29 maybe to do so.
Yeah. No,
So yeah, that
for
would
sure,
be a good
yeah.
one.
I
That
can
would
definitely,
be a good one.
I can definitely see something like that, especially like if they want to get to develop. I mean, they need some young talent there anyway, like a bit more of a younger talent. So getting like maybe like a like on a budget, like you said, on a budget, sort of like backup point guard you can have on the roster for the next 4 years could definitely be something good over there. So yeah, I think there's someone where it's gonna be like plug and play. You're gonna be able to play on a lot of different teams. I could see someone like Cam Jones doing that for sure.
Yeah.
Jay, I'm gonna throw it over to you, my guy, and I feel like our prospects couldn't be any more different. You have someone who's like kind of like a finished product. We know what you're gonna get from a Cam Jones coming into the league, older type of rookie. Jay, Cooper Flag, one of the youngest players in the draft. I talked about Noah Essengate, the second youngest player in the draft. Let's talk about the third or fourth. Probably
Yeah. I was gonna say
when I talk
you're
about
on brand here.
Joan Beringue. I think that's how you pronounce it, but I apologize for my pronunciation. But Jay, going from someone who's playing in Europe, I can't even like pronounce this man's team that he's played for. I think he's playing for the Kedavita Olympia. I'm not even going to pronounce that, but basically he plays overseas.
Yeah,
Basically, he's an
yeah.
overseas player, super young talent. Crazy story with him, by the way. This guy was a soccer player up until the age of 20, so he did not even touch a basketball. And sorry, until up until 2020, 2021, he realizes, oh shoot, I don't have any shoes. And my feet can't fit into any soccer cleats anymore. Let me try to transition for sports. This man goes to basketball, and in 3 years, he's playing in the top division of that country. Jay, he was like, I think prior to this season, he was supposed to play in, I think, the second division version of this team. They're about to send him basically to the G League of that league, but the coach was so impressed that he became basically the backup center for that team. And you know, the stats are going to jump out at you. 5 points a game, 4 rebounds on 64% shooting from the field. But Jay, when I see this man play, I feel like he is going to be your prototypical rim running center that can just be a menace on the defensive side. He is 6'9" without shoes, and he's still growing, by the way. This guy is still growing. He can possibly go up to 7 feet at some point. But again, only 5-4 for the season. But he has great rim running potential at 18 years old. And he is someone who, from what I see, and you can see like in the way that he runs and he's able to like chase down blocks at the professional level, because of the way he plays soccer and the way you can have to like turn your hips and like change directions at many points in the game, this guy just like can like defend one shot on one side and just turn his hips so easily to get into a second contest off. I just am fascinated by the build of this guy and his like potential to be a defensive force, like not even just a defensive force in the league, but being able to like be such an athletic rim running center that I think, let's be honest, every NBA team could use someone like a Derek Lively in the past, can use someone like a Clint Capella in their lineup, and I think that this guy could, as much of a raw prospect he is, I think he could fit that sort of mold. When it comes to dribbling the basketball, forget about it. We don't want to talk about that. He is a pure play finisher. He has good hands around the rim. I don't like, again, you don't want him making like more than one or two moves at the rim, but he's good at doing that. He can make the extra pass. I think like there's actually like a little bit of something in terms of his passing ability there. Very raw prospect, very young, but I think that in the right system, if you develop him in the right way, could be a very much an impact player at the center position.
So I think it's very important to mention just how raw of a prospect he is. So I'm glad you gave his backstory in terms of just his quick transition from soccer to basketball, because I do think it's a really great reflection of the fact that this is a guy who's going to need to be moldable. It'll be interesting to hear your list of teams that you think kind of fit within the framework of like being able to not just utilize him in a real way out the gate, but develop him into a more well-rounded center. The comp that I got when I kind of looked into him in terms of like thinking about super raw, high athletic, doesn't really know how to play the game from a thinking perspective out the gate just yet, and it's gonna take some time. Feels like the draft profile for Kai Jones coming out of Texas, as this just like
Yeah,
hyper athletic center type that can kind of just fly around, play finish like you mentioned beforehand, and put himself in a lot of positions where he could just out jump you. And that's just simply going to be how he gets blocks. That's how he's going to be able to get rebounds. Is skywalking, how he's going to be able to play finish in terms of getting lobs and being a real threat around the rim that way. He feels like a guy that's so raw as a prospect, similar to Kai Jones, that he's going to either need to go to a team that can kind of let him play a lot out the gate, a la how Kai Jones ended up getting taken way too high, but going to a Charlotte Hornets team, but later on developing and playing relatively well in his time with the LA Clippers for a short period of time, right? And I think he kind of played some of his better basketball during that time as well. I think that that's one element of it. I think another element of it is going to a team that's well known for its developmental tree. So I'm interested to see what type of teams you think would be a good fit for him, given the fact that farm systeming is one of those things that the NBA is like, I think just now getting hip to in terms of building up prospects, because we're in a day and age where being able to build up young prospects is like the new cap flexibility.
Bro, just like, I mean, like this guy, like just because of his like great gifts. Another thing I want to talk about quickly with him before I go into like the teams I think that could be useful for him is the fact that like he just has just good instincts. Like he is like twitchy. I don't know how to say it, but he's like twitchy in terms of like, we talk about twitchy like offensive players, someone who would just like, who is like has a good handle, who's able to just like really like fool defenders on that way. This man can like, again, with in terms of like hip movement, just be able to like be at like multiple places at the same time. And I think like if he can like finally get a grasp of basketball, which is really weird to say, by the way, like coming for someone who could potentially be a late first round draft pick, but if he could put it together, this guy could have like absolutely the tools to absolutely to be a impact player in this league. Some teams I'm thinking of him that could potentially use him. Funnily enough, the Atlanta Hawks. I mean, like Onyeka Okongwu, Clint Capella. I don't know if they're gonna like. I don't think they have a like, late pick in the first round. Maybe in the second round. Maybe that's a potential. I know this guy is such a wide draft range, so like him drafted anywhere from like 24 all the way to 40 might be.
Atlanta does have 22, for what it's worth.
Could be, especially because I mean they've been trying to trade Clint Capella for years, so I don't know if they want to try and develop him in that system. But especially if Trae Young is going to be there long term.
Yeah.
One of the best lob throwers in the league. I mean, like he could potentially be great there. Another team I could see him being a good fit on, potentially the Boston Celtics. They have two picks, like either a late first round pick or early second round pick. I know they love shooting the basketball and all that, but getting like maybe like, I mean, we've seen them the development system. It's been great being able to develop guys like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Payne Pritchard, all those guys. If he can like get into that system, we've seen like Neemi's Queta provide some decent minutes,
Yeah.
decent minutes in this year. So I can trust the development system, and especially like playing like winning basketball. I think that could be good for him as well. Jay,
I know what team you're thinking next. I think I know what team you're thinking next too.
is it a team that's not in the draft right now? Is it a team that's not in the draft right now? Because
Hey,
look, I'm all for what they're trying to do over there. But this guy just fits someone who fits next to Luka Doncic perfectly. Do the Lakers trade in for an early second round pick, late first round pick? Because I feel like if you want to build around Luka long term, this is like they want him here for the next decade.
mm-hmm.
Yes, he's not going to be able to play right away, obviously. But you still need to you need to deal with the center position. So they're going to have like a starting caliber center, hopefully, by the start of next year.
Yeah.
Give this man's 18 years old. This guy has the physical gifts. This guy, putting him next to Luka Doncic, who has made massive careers out of people like Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively. He made Jackson Hayes look like a pretty comfortable center for the final few weeks of the regular season. Jay, he and Luka Doncic could be perfect together. I know they don't have a pick in this draft right now. I think they have the 25th pick and then the 25th pick in the second round. So they don't have like an earlier draft pick. So he might be gone by then.
Yeah.
But trading up potentially, putting him in that space, I mean, it's not a bad idea.
Yeah, and the other wild card name, TV, if you put everything that I said together from a developmental system, is the perfect spot. Hate to say it, but the truth of the matter is Oklahoma City at 24 is kind of the one. It's kind of another one. If we're talking about developmental systems, hey, you only have really one more year of Isaiah Hartenstein on the books because the next one's a team option. They're probably going to decline out of the fact that they have to re-up on Chet Holmgren and Jalen Williams.
24. I mean, like, yeah, for sure. I mean, I could definitely see it. They definitely have time. I mean, they're going to give him some time, which is good. And obviously, in terms of like cost efficiency and as like a late first round pick, I could definitely see him there too. What I'm basically saying is like a lot of teams need this type of center. These type of centers, although you could say are a dime a dozen, there's only so very few that are extremely effective at what they do. That's why, like, for a long time, like Daniel Gafford was a hot commodity. Like Capella was in the trade market a lot over the last couple seasons because these guys, when they're used to their full potential, when these guys are hitting hitting the right spot, these guys could be key members of your rotation. And I think someone like Berige could bring that to a team. And I think, like you said, the Thunder could be really good. I think the Lakers, if they really want to if they really want to be long term with this Luka Doncic thing, I mean, this guy could. I think this could be like a really good second round, late or early second round. Take a chance on him or very late first round. I understand if people don't want to take him in the first round, especially with how new he is to basketball and how he doesn't really have like the perfect feel to it, even though he has good instincts on the defensive end. But I think he could be good for multiple teams.
Yeah, he's definitely an interesting archetype, and the reason why I thought it was so interesting that you mentioned the Luka Doncic Lakers aspect of it, not just is because of the fact that they desperately need another center, but given the fact that, like you mentioned, we've seen his ability to work well with lob threat centers, and this guy screams play finisher in a real way. This guy could be the Lakers' DeAndre Jordan out the gate, but does not have nearly as burly up a frame. That's going to be the biggest thing for him. It's kind of bulking up a little bit, but he could be the Lakers' play finisher, DeAndre Jordan type to start and become a guy that maybe slowly but surely understands the pick and roll operation a little bit more to maybe turn into more of like what Dwight Howard was with the Rockets next to James Harden, right? And be more of that kind of frame next to a guy like Luka Doncic. Maybe not as good. Obviously, Dwight was still super solid and all-star caliber and all those things like that. So I don't want to go ahead and put that kind of pressure on the kid like that. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of upside there with the fact that his athleticism and flexibility gives him a lot of like instinctual upside as a defender and as a play finisher.
Yeah, no, 100%. I do think that it's again such an interesting archetype, someone who is super young, so you could put him into your system and try and kind of again. I feel like there's a theme with these guys I'm putting on here, but it's like being able to like mold them with the right fit under the right system, like onto their team. But I feel like there's just something with this guy which I think can be like he, especially like if you like have the time to develop him, take a chance on him. There's a reason he's like rising up draft boards. It's because like you look at him and it's like, okay, this guy's gonna be like he is an NBA center. Yeah. He looks like an NBA center. He has the instincts of an NBA center. Can we get the skills to kind of like work around that
match,
too?
right.
To match with it? It's gonna be interesting. But he is super young. He has a lot of time to build. If he goes through the rookie contract, he'll be like 22 by the time he finishes his rookie contract. Lots of time for him to develop. So I think he's gonna be a damn good player. But yeah,
I'm hyped, bro. I'm hyped for the NBA draft.
I'm hyped for it. There's a lot of good ones here. Me and Jay, man. I mean, like, bro, we really went from someone who's a freaking like a 4-year senior about to turn 24 this year to some dude who's about to turn 19 in November. Bro, when I saw that he was born 2006, like I almost like fainted. Like when I saw that he was born 2006, like this Bellinger guy. Like, bro, we are old. We are old,
bro.
This guy's about to like. This guy could be a different maker. But yeah, let us know what you guys think down below. Where do you feel like these two guys are going to end up going? Any player comparisons you see? If you guys check out their highlights, and where do you think they're going to go in the draft for sure? Again, we're going to keep bringing you guys more of these prospects going forward. Also, we're going to be doing the NBA mock draft later on this year, so that's going to be super dope. But Jay, it has been another fantastic episode. Thank you guys for watching. What do you have to tell these people before we sign out?
Hey, bro. Hopefully, we have a competitive next couple of games in the NBA Finals by the time that we discuss. Things will still be going on, but hopefully it'll be, like I said, more of a breakdown. I know that this one for us was a little bit more like shallow in terms of our overall analysis because of the fact that the two games were just so different from one another. So I'm hoping that these next two games by the next time that we record are just a lot more in depth in terms of just like the competitiveness of the games, the nuances of some of the adjustments that were made and things like that. For the WNBA, I think it's going to come to a point where we are going to maybe start discussing power rankings a little bit. So stay tuned for that, whether that's something that gets done on social media or something that maybe we start bi-weekly or every other month for covering things on the podcast. And then for the NBA draft, TV kind of mentioned it in passing at the end there, but our NBA mock drafts are going to come soon. We usually end up doing some kind of like lottery run on the podcast right before the actual draft itself. So expect that very soon because TV, we only have a couple weeks, dog, before this thing gets set up, and we're going to hear a couple of these players get their names called to the podium. So that's going to be huge. A lot of diverse content. Looking forward to it. And yeah. We're going to be seeing a Larry O'Brien trophy holder soon, too. So,
yeah,
once that happens and the NBA offseason kicks off, bro, we are in full mode. We are in full mode.
Yeah, 100%. It's going to be another great offseason. Going to be a great NBA Finals. Hopefully the pieces continue to make this a lot more interesting. We have a lot more storylines to talk about going to the next season and to the next episode. WNBA has been popping off again in the first 3 weeks, so we're going to definitely continue to cover that. And, of course, you're going to hear about the prospects, some of the deeper cuts like we've been giving you, the top prospects we're going to talk about in the NBA mock draft. So you're going to get a lot of different content going forward, and it's been super dope to talk just different aspects of basketball over these last couple of weeks. We're excited to talk more about it in the next episode where me and Jay will be back here next week talking some more basketball. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Continue to support the Hit Your Free Throws podcast to all of our links down below. Again, we'll be back next week for a new episode. But yeah, hope you have a fantastic day. This is TV. This is Jay. We're signing out. Peace.